Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed, you were made.
Hello and welcome to the When Stories Radio Network. This is our podcast, and today I'm joined with Harmon. Welcome, Cami.
Good morning. How are ya?
I'm doing great. This is Wendy Babcock, by the way. I forget to say my name sometimes now that we have certified facilitators also hosting podcast episodes. So Cami and I, we met through a mutual friend who introduced Cami and I. So first, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, Cami, and tell everyone who you are and what you do.
So, my name is Dr. Kamela Harmon, and I have been a nurse practitioner with a background in emergency medicine and trauma for God, almost 30 years. It makes me sound old. I also have a doctorate in education with a focus on ethical leadership. And I love to help people. And I started to work with Wendy on my very first speaking engagement to help people with grief and loss and kind of reincarnate themselves and knowing that it's no matter what the loss is, it's not the end of the world for you. And I'm doing more public speaking and trying to help people with coaching on healthy lifestyle, overcoming grief and anxiety, mental health, lots of things. So a lot of exciting things on the horizon for me.
Yeah, and a lot of it just stems from your life experiences, both being the doctor, the trauma history, all of the things kind of have culminated into this moment where now you're going to be getting on stages and coaching people. And it's quite remarkable, really. So I remember when you came to me, I'm trying to think who introduced us. It was a friend of Erica Sweeney's.
Yes, my Aunt Vicky.
Oh, I don't know if I knew she was your aunt.
Amy.
That's interesting. Yeah, I thought it was just a friend. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so yeah. So that's cool. Yeah, because your story it's heartbreaking. I mean, honestly, I remember getting off the call with you when we first met, and I was just in tears. And I came over to my husband. I'm like, you can't ever go anywhere. I'm just like, oh my God. You know.
I remember that first time we spoke, and I started telling you about my Wen story, and I remember you just cried and cried, and you're like, you've got to tell your story. You've got to get this out.
Yeah, yeah, because and I think it was you telling me who Clark was. I think that, and yes, the loss is very important, but I think after I got off the call with you, I felt like I had met him. And that to me, I don't know if I've experienced someone telling me about another person to the point where I felt like, oh my gosh, I feel like I might have known him, in the details that you provided. And even in your one stories, people are going to hear after the interview, we're going to play Cammie's one story. You'll hear her introduce who Clark was to you. So I love that you do that.
Yeah, he was the most remarkable human being I have ever met, and I am so blessed that he was my husband for almost 25 years. This year would have been our 25th wedding anniversary. So
Wow.
he was funny and engaging and just so quick-witted and such a good balance for me, right? So level-headed. He was just such a joy, and we could just talk about everything and anything. And he really truly taught me what unconditional love was. Unconditional. He supported me in getting my doctorate and achieving whatever goal I wanted. He was 100% behind me. Um, you know, the one really remarkable thing in 25 years, one time he raised his voice to me once.
Wow.
I deserved it. I probably deserved it more than that one time, to be honest. But yeah, he really taught me what love is, how to love someone, and how to be loved.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah, yeah,
And it is heartbreaking is that he's gone. I think because you had that, I mean, and you tell me your experience, but I think that probably drove you further to staying with the living. I mean, you know what I mean? Like living your life. I don't mean like staying alive. I mean staying in the living and enjoying your life and what you guys have built together.
Yeah, he was one of those people, with his faith and, his mindset, we'll be together some other time. He
Yeah.
he was here, taught me everything I needed to know so I could, do this next chapter of my life. And he would be so incredibly disappointed if I would have shut down, crawled in bed, no, no.
Yeah.
Life is meant to be lived, and my life is to be a story worth telling. And I can't do that if I'm not engaged with the people around me.
100%. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So, there was a point where you basically had to pull yourself up, so, and then I know you talked about on it in your story. Would you just share a little bit of some of the things that you did? I know the first couple weeks were hard, and so when you had that moment of, oh man, I can't do this. I have to figure it out, get out of bed, get off the couch, whatever it is. So you want to talk a little bit about that and what you did?
Yeah, sure. So for three, about 3 weeks or so after he passed, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't, I really don't remember a whole lot, just bits and pieces, like flashes. Uh, and I had lost like 20 pounds in that period because I literally couldn't put anything in my mouth. And I was getting tired and weak. And finally I was like, this is not okay. This is not healthy. This is not what he would want. It's not good for my physical health, my mental health. And so I remembered the promise I had made him the day of the funeral, when I closed his casket, that I would grieve with grace and dignity. And I was not honoring that. I was not honoring my promise to him. So I got out of bed and I got a hold of a dietitian friend, and we talked through, you know, my meals, optimizing my intake. I talked with I had two fantastic grief counselors, which I still will talk to when I need them to this day to help with that anxiety, stress, all of that. Exercising, I started exercising more, trying to get some of the anxiety off, trying to help with a healthier mindset overall, and physically just being a little bit stronger. And I created challenges for myself, a 30-day challenge. I did the hard 75. And let me tell
Wow.
you, that is a mental Ironman. And anyone who
That's
accomplishes that, hands off, because it was probably one of the hardest things I did. But since that time, I started journaling and dealing with my feelings, looking at things, helping people. Um, I lost 120 pounds without using a GLP-1 in a very healthy way. I help support my friends and the other people around me who want to be healthier, who want to be mentally healthy, physically healthy. Um, and then talking with people about grief and loss. I mean, loss is more than just, losing your spouse. Loss can be anything magnanimous to that individual, and you're still going to go through the grieving process. I've been told by many people around me that I am, an inspiration for how to grieve in a healthy, positive way. And
Yeah.
so because of that, I, will help them, and they will call me, and I'm, coaching, trying to get into more coaching and support that way for people who need it.
Yeah, and you've mentioned like in our talks, I think in coaching, and maybe even in your talk, you mentioned like this is not you do the therapy, you start exercising and do all the right things, and all of a sudden you're not sad anymore.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, you still have all that come up, it's just you have better tools now to probably to deal with that, I imagine.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, my toolbox is full. Let me tell you. I mean, I still, I still grieve for Clark. I still
Of
miss
course.
him every day. I miss the life we had, but he's always walking beside me. And I
Yeah.
am much better equipped now, to handle additional loss, right?
Yeah.
So I've lost other friends. I've lost my brother in January.
Right.
Um, so I am much better equipped to manage that and the grief that will come up as well.
Yeah. And for the people who, but your clients that come to you, I
Mhm.
imagine it's very relatable for them to know that, I mean, not that they want you to have lost somebody, but there's a connection that is made there when someone knows that you know what they're going through, where it's not just, oh, I feel for you, but they don't really understand. It's like losing your parents, right? Yeah, all of a sudden you feel orphaned, and it's like a club you don't really understand until you're part of it. And I feel like that's probably what it's like for a husband or other family members, you
Yeah,
know?
it is a very unique group,
Yeah,
and it does. There's a deep connection when you have someone. I don't care if they've been married for 5 years or 50 years. It's
yeah,
still that loss, and you can help them. And I feel as though, with my background in emergency medicine and trauma, I have had to help people for 30 years
yeah.
with the deal with and manage the worst day of their lives a lot of times.
And that piece also just comes into play too with your one story as far as like, and you mentioned that about you feeling like somehow you couldn't save him.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't, and I had to carry that guilt and that anger, because who am I going to be mad at?
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
I'm the one who found him. I'm the one who, no spoiler alerts, but
right.
I had left when he asked me not to. And I come home and I find him and I start CPR, and I I can't get him back. We worked him for over an hour, and I had to be the one to say, stop.
Yeah,
It's time to let him go. And a lot of times if it's an accident or something like that, you have an outlet for that anger,
right.
right? My outlet was me.
Oh,
I had to
that
be mad
just
at myself. I had to carry that grief, that guilt, that, and play in the what if game. And
right.
with all the journaling that I have done, the counseling, the um, exercise, the physical health, along with the mental health, it helped me to realize that it's not my fault. Even if I would have been here, I wouldn't have been able to save him.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
wouldn't have mattered even if he was in the hospital. It would
right.
not have mattered, but it took a long time
And I wonder how
to
many
get there.
people beat themselves up, whether, and it could be not even as your situation, but even someone who, left the hospital room for 15 minutes and that's when their person passed and like, oh gosh, if I would have been there, I could have been there with them. People carry this guilt around all the time. Besides the loss and the grief, I attach that guilt and that shame to ourselves, and that's got to make it even harder to go through.
It it does. It makes a tremendous loss that much harder. But
Yeah,
a lot of times, and again, over my 30 years, I know that there are times where the loved ones will be at the bedside, holding vigil, loving and telling their person it's okay to go and this and that, and then they leave for a few minutes and then the person passes away. But that happens so often, almost like
on purpose.
on purpose,
Yeah,
right? And I hope no one ever feels that guilt. It's hard not to, but it's okay
Yeah.
because you told them. They
And
know. They can still hear everything you say when you say I love you and I'm so
yeah.
glad for the years and this and that. They get to hear all of those things.
Oh yeah. And I believe that. I believe that people choose how they want to go. When my dad passed, we were all around him. He was on hospice. He'd only been on hospice for like 2 days or day and a half. And him and my mom, around every holiday, every family gathering, they had their what they called their Marty Susie time. They would just go away from the rest of the party and just be together. Just the two of them have their conversations. They just wanted to escape and be together. And so with all of us there, my dad had a comment like they had the hospice nurse there and he had to go to the bathroom or something. So of course we're all going to step out except for my mom. And when we stepped out on the deck, that's when they said their last words and he passed. That's what he wanted, his Marty Susie time.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I
Yeah.
love
So
that. I love that
yeah.
for
So
you.
so I fully believe that people choose who, how, when, and it's got nothing to do with the people. Technically, it's how somebody wants to go. So yeah, I
Yeah.
believe that. So let's talk briefly about your one story and what that experience was like for you, because again, you're revisiting things that are very difficult, putting the story together, writing it, rehearsal, getting on stage, the whole thing. So, we did 6 weeks in advance. So what was that like for you?
Oh, it was cathartic, really. And you got to remember during this time, I had just lost my brother a few
Yeah.
months before. My boyfriend had lost his only daughter in a car accident. And so there was so much
Yeah.
emotion, and it was overwhelming and heartbreaking and just truly unbelievable that it was all happening, right?
Yeah.
And but yet writing about it, and as I'm writing, right, because you have us go back to um basically the beginning for me,
Yeah.
right? The beginning of our, like when we were dating and how we met,
Hmm.
and just by the randomness of that. And then more memories were just flooding me that, you know, made me laugh, would make me cry,
Yeah.
would bring me joy. And yet there was some heartache with it too. And it was difficult, but yet 100% worth every second that I devoted to writing writing the story, writing about him, me, us, overcoming all of it. It was fantastic.
And
Difficult, but fantastic.
yeah, and your reaction afterwards was similar to many of the one story speakers, especially the ones that have the really difficult stories, you coming off stage and, you know, us hugging. I just felt
Yeah.
like that emotion just pour out of you afterwards, and that
Yeah.
happens for a lot of people.
It was there was just this release. I remember before getting on stage, you had mic'd me up and I was nervous, but yet calm. There was like this dichotomy to it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I purposely didn't wear my shoes because I needed to feel grounded. Remember, you're like,
Yes.
you're not wearing your shoes. I'm like, no, no, I
Yep.
need to feel grounded. And I get on stage and I sit on the arm of the chair and I start talking. And I'm going through it and I'm keeping eye contact with everybody in the audience. And you can see them laugh, you can see them cry, you can see the despair when I'm talking about trying to save him, save Clark,
Yeah.
and then you end, and I'm very grateful and thankful for the opportunity and the attention that the audience gave me. And when I got off stage, it's like this release,
Yeah.
this complete release of all the anxiety, the stress, the unsurety, and yet the confidence. Like, and I remember hugging you, and I'm like, at like everybody's crying.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah. But it felt so good
Yeah.
to tell it. And then to have people in the audience be able to relate to what I'm saying and to want to talk to me afterwards and ask
Yeah.
me questions and hey, I've had a similar experience. Like there was such gratification that I'm able to help people by telling that story. I think I've told you before, like as a nurse practitioner, I have patients. I help them every day, right? But it's like one at a time.
Right.
But I feel like on a bigger stage, when I'm telling the story, I'm able to help more people. And I feel like that is my purpose.
Yeah.
That's why God didn't take Clark to punish me. He took Clark because Clark already taught me everything I need to know. And
Mm.
his loss and how I deal with it and have dealt with it and my ability to help people through telling of the story is the beginning of this next chapter for me. And I'm so, so excited about that.
Excited just to watch because you are phenomenal on stage. You've got, and I'm sure people from the audience told you this, you have a really great stage presence, just in the way you tell the story, with emotion and humor. And I think that's really what brought your story, like, why you did such a really great job because you bring the humor in and the joy. It's not just the hard parts, it's all the humor. And that's why I think everyone in the audience felt like they knew Clark at the end, and that's what you want. And then reaching them through your story being so relatable, for their loved ones who they've maybe lost. So I'm just excited to see the stages that you're going to be on, the clients that you're going to help. It's quite remarkable even to be in my shoes and feel like I'm kind of in the peanut gallery, like getting to watch you kind of, help so many people now.
I am so fortunate. And I know I say this a lot, Wendy, and I know you and I have talked about it several times where I feel grateful and so blessed because you gave me the opportunity to tell my story. You were like, you need to tell your story. You need to share this because look at everything. And then there were some things in the story that you didn't even know when we initially talked until
Yeah.
until until the day, that I was on stage. But you know, there's so much more. And I'm just so excited and so thankful to you that I was able to have this opportunity. And to the girls in the cohort who were that's
Yeah.
the other thing with how you have one story set up and you have your cohort group. Even now, even today, we're still supportive of one another. We're
Yeah.
still, messaging and wanting to know what each other is doing because they're so accomplished. So many of those women are so accomplished that
Yeah.
it really gives me hope that I can, maybe write more books like Monica has,
Oh, yeah.
talk more like Tracy does, help people in, the way that Jennifer's story will, the way that
Yeah.
Vanessa does. I mean,
Yeah.
again, grateful and blessed beyond.
And that's the magic of cohorts. And that's why I never push people to join. I'm always like, well, if it feels aligned and this is the right time, I can encourage you, but also like I know if I was to get pushy with it, it wouldn't be the right cohort. And that's what the magic, I think the magic is what happens is the right people come together at the right time with the right stories. And that's really all it is. I mean, I say all it is, but I mean, that's a big thing, but it's because people like you um, find the courage to tell the story, and that's the thing is that the stage is the catalyst, but you still have to do the work. You have to write it. You have to get up on stage and do it and deliver it and, watch it land and see what happens next. So,
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for you. Grateful for you to be on the podcast, of course, and I'm excited to see what comes next.
Well, thank you so much for your support, your insight, and the opportunity, Wendy. I
Oh,
am
of course.
truly very lucky. to
Oh,
have you in my corner.
I feel like through this, I gained a lot of friends.
I
Seriously.
know. That makes me
So
cry again.
I know you cry, I cry. Everyone knows that about me. I cry 0 to 100. I'm in tears. So, all right. I think it's a good point to wrap it up. So thank you so much. Those of you who are listening, stay tuned because up next is Cammie's One story. Thanks again, Cammie.
Thank you, Wendy.
Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed, you were made.
When everything changed, I'd suffered the loss of my husband, Clark. We had been together for 25 years, and he was the light of my life, and I was his. I was treated like a princess. I was one of the few, the very rare, to know and experience unconditional love. I never would have guessed, at the age of 55, I'd be sitting at my kitchen island, a widow. Clark had suffered a heart attack and was taken to a local hospital. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, the interventional cardiologist came to me and told me the extent of his cardiovascular disease. But by the grace of God, he only needed one stent. So I went with Clark and the staff to the intensive care unit, kissed him goodnight, and came home. The next several days were spent in the hospital, aiding Clark in his recovery and helping to reorganize our lives, because he could no longer work as a commercial airline pilot. He was devastated and begged me for forgiveness because he thought he ruined our lives. He hadn't. Worse off in our marriage, we had literally nothing to our names except for a borrowed air mattress from a friend to sleep on. So we did what we always did. We constructed a plan, worked out all the details to overcome this latest obstacle in our life. A few days later, Clark came home, and he had a surprise waiting for him. His brother from Oklahoma, who was going to stay for a few days. We had family over that night. We grilled out, enjoyed our time, laughed, and just really, truly reminisced and cut up like always. It was Thursday night golf league, so several of the guys were stopping by, shaking Clark's hand, telling him how good it was to see him and how glad that he was doing better and was home safe. Last picture I ever took of Clark was of him and his brother sitting by the outdoor fireplace, laughing, joking, cutting up like they always did. The next morning, Clark woke up and he's like, I don't feel right. And I'm like, what's the matter? What's going on? And he couldn't really elaborate. He didn't have any chest pain. He didn't have any chest pressure. He didn't have any shortness of breath. He just didn't feel right. And I asked him, do you want to go back to the emergency department? Do you want to see the doctor? God, no. So he grabbed a mug of coffee, went to sit on the deck with his brother, and watched the morning golfers go by. A little while later, his brother Chris and I went to run errands. And Clark stayed behind because he had to wait for the contractor to come. We came back a couple hours later, and it was near lunchtime. And all of a sudden, his best friend of 40 years called. Brad, every time he called, I knew it was going to be an hour-long conversation, y'all, because they would reminisce, laugh until their stomachs hurt, and just profess their undying bromance love for one another. For 40 years, ladies and gentlemen, this was my life. But at the end of that conversation, Chris and I had already decided we were going to go out to the campground and close the camper for the season because Clark and I wouldn't be able to take any more trips. And Clark was trying to persuade me, no, don't go. I don't know the plan. I didn't get to talk to you. Do it tomorrow. And I was like, baby, let me just check this off my list. It's a big to-do. That was always my priority, right? Checking everything off my list. He continued to try and persuade me. Stop. Stay here. Let's just sit on the deck. Come and talk with me. I need more time. I want more time. I kept walking down the driveway, and Clark followed me, acquiescing to my request as always. I got in the truck and he asked me, "How much gas do you have?" I said, "A half a tank." "How much depth do you have?" And then he looked at the gauge and he looked me in the eye and he said, "You're going to be okay." And I thought to myself, well, duh, I know how to drive a truck, for the love of God. So then we looked one another in the eye, said, "I love you." And I watched him amble up the driveway back to the house while I drove away with truck and trailer in tow. A couple hours later, Chris and I returned after emptying everything out, and I couldn't park that truck and trailer for shit. So I went to find Clark because he could do anything. And I found him. He was outside on our deck, face up, not breathing. So I jumped into action because as a nurse practitioner with a background in emergency medicine and trauma, I'm trained for these situations. This is my wheelhouse, people. I immediately started CPR and during chest compressions could feel his ribs cracking. I had his brother call 911 and the neighbors could hear me screaming Clark's name and begging God not to take him from me. The neighbors took over chest compressions while I, with all futility, was attempting to breathe life back into his still body. The EMS came, and I was talking with the police all the while, watching everything they did. Because you got to remember, for 30 years, I'm the content expert. I know the timing of when we check for a pulse. I know when the meds have to be given, y'all. So I accompanied Clark in the ambulance to the hospital. I watched them place a breathing tube for him while they continued chest compressions. I walked through the trauma room doors and immediately noted on my watch we had been working him for over an hour. And then that's when I looked in the emergency department physician's eyes, and I recognized that look. For 30 years, I've known that look. And so I held up my hand and I asked them to stop their efforts in saving Clark's life because there was no longer a life to be saved. What I recall next, I was like, this must be what Moses felt like, parting the Red Sea. Because as I walked to Clark's side, they parted from me and silently left the room one by one. I went to Clark's right side and I leaned over and I grabbed his left hand and I took his wedding band and I put it on my hand for my matching band. And what happened next, I'm going to explain like this. It's like holding up a crystal vase and letting it drop to the concrete and watching it explode. Because that's what happened to me. I exploded into a million shards of what was my former self. Because all I could do at this point was hold the love of my life's hand, cry, and beg God to take him to heaven. I'd spoken with the coroner and discovered that Clark had tried to call me twice while we were gone. But I had left my phone in the truck, and I will never know what he wanted to say or share with me. And that's a difficult realization even today. The ride home from the hospital was cold, numbing, and silent. I remember walking into the house and seeing my two best friends standing there with these hopeful looks on their faces. But once I looked at them, I shook my head no. The illusion dissolved and we were all broken. The next several days were a blur of darkness, restlessness, loss, guilt, and sleeplessness because I had to plan the love of my life's funeral. There were 1,000 views online and the church was packed, and it was a lovely service and tribute to the man that I've loved for half my lifetime. The day they closed his casket, I let go of sobs of anguish and love all rolled into one. And I made him a promise that day that I would grieve with grace and dignity to honor him and the life that we had shared. You know, Clark and I had met long before the days of Google, eHarmony, etc. It was the days of dial-up in the chat rooms, ladies and gentlemen, because long-distance phone calls were so expensive. This was before cell phones, texting, all of that. So the best way to catch up with your friends on the cheap was to hit the chat room. So I was doing just that. Me and a couple of my girlfriends from the East Coast were chit-chatting about all our nursing stuff when this man made a smart-ass remark about how nurses give good back rubs. I was not going to let that go, so I, in turn, gave him a smart-ass response. The next thing you know, I'm getting asked to go to a private chat room. That's where I met Clark for the very first time. We chatted that first night for 8 hours, y'all. 8 hours. At the end of that conversation, we agreed the next night we were going to get online and chat again. And we did. That second night, we chatted for another 6 hours and we talked about everything. We talked about our family, religion, dreams, aspirations, careers, you name it. We talked about all of it. Unknowingly, Clark even wrote our future wedding vows that night. He asked for my phone number, and much to his astonishment and my own, I gave it to him. He called me, and we talked for another 2 hours. And the funny thing was, after that, we never got online again, ever. We always talked on the phone to share our day. Fast forward 3 weeks, I'm in O'Hare Airport waiting for Clark. Funny thing was, my mom thought he was a serial killer. And I'm like, Mom, why would the airlines hire a serial killer for a pilot? And she was convinced. She's like, no. So she made me bring 2 friends so that I wouldn't get stuffed in the back of the car. Like, ladies and gentlemen, seriously, stuffing me in a trunk? Anyway, I did what she asked. And I brought my 2 friends. And I remember sitting at the arrival gate and my legs were shaking. And my stomach was doing flip-flops, and I was so nervous. Because at this point, we didn't have pictures of one another. All we had was the descriptions we'd given each other, typing and talking on the phone. But I looked over my shoulder, and I immediately recognized him. Because there he stood, in his pilot's uniform, a dozen roses in his hand, and a huge grin. And I walked up to him, and he gave me a hug for the first time. And then he kissed me for the first time. We rode back to my house together because he was not a serial killer, a point which even to this day my mom gets revved about. Because it's amazing how Clark can go from serial killer to favorite son-in-law. And it's a title that all my brothers-in-laws know they will never attain, people, ever. So the next morning, Clark and I got up, we had breakfast, and we were just enjoying being together, laughing, talking, enjoying the space. That afternoon, his tummy was grumbling. He was laying on the couch, and I'm like, baby, you okay? Is there something wrong? And that's when he sheepishly admitted he had to pass gas, but was too embarrassed to do so in front of me. So I immediately asked him, have you ever lit a fart on fire? Because as far as I knew, this was an urban legend, right? So it took me another 45 minutes to convince my Southern gentleman to let me perform this science experiment. Being the good sport Clark was, he hefted up his leg on the back of the couch, told me to get my Bic lighter ready, and all of a sudden, whoosh, this yellow-orange flame came shooting out his rear, y'all. I burnt my thumb, rolled over backwards, laughing like a hyena, and he all the while is patting his butt because it was on fire. He would later tell his best friend that he knew right then and there I was the girl for him, but had actually admitted he knew that very night when we were online texting and talking that he was going to marry me. 9/11 happened, and I was a traveling nurse, and Clark was like, "That's fantastic. That's fine because you can go wherever you want, and I can land there." All right. So our adventurous love story began, and we did. We did everything from hiking and horseback riding the Rocky Mountains to digging for dinosaur bones. Nothing was off limits for me. We took advantage of every national and state park, hiking, camping, whitewater rafting, you name it. Clark knew that I hadn't done much and hadn't been outside my state, and so he wanted to make sure our life was a story worth telling. And let me tell you, there are a lot of stories to be told, y'all. It was a wonderful life, and I'm very grateful to this man who loved me. 9/11 did happen, and we were living in Eugene, Oregon, actually. By the grace of God, Clark was home with me. Unfortunately, a few days later, he had to leave to go overseas. I knew he had to fly from Long Island, New York to Moscow. But then I didn't hear from him for like 4 or 5 days, and I was ready to lose my ever-loving mind. Because you got to remember, we still didn't have cell phones yet, people, right? All of a sudden, I heard from him, and he was in Geneva, Switzerland. He was safe by the grace of God. There was just one problem. The plane he was flying wasn't registered in the U.S., and the FAA wouldn't allow them to come back into the country. So it would be another 6 long, agonizing weeks before I saw my Southern gentleman. Once again, I'm at an airport waiting for Clark, and I could finally see him. And I cannot tell you the relief that washed over me when I saw his face, y'all. At the time, Clark had an RV, and so we took the RV from Oklahoma back to our home in Eugene, Oregon. But we decided we were going to make a pit stop. One catch. Clark did not want to be married in Sin City on Halloween. So we hauled ass, put the pedal to the metal, and got to Vegas. We were married October 30th, 2001 at the Little White Chapel on the Vegas Strip. I was so exhausted from the travel and everything. All I wanted was Taco Bell and my bed. Clark was appalled and absolutely not. He would not have his bride eating fast food on her wedding night. So Clark took me to Ruth Chris Steakhouse for our very first meal as a married couple. Clark would continue that trend of making sure I was cared for and had everything I needed, whether I thought it was necessary or not. This was a man who taught me what unconditional love was, how to support your partner, how to make sure they could attain their dreams and aspirations. And that was never more obvious than the day when I took the stage for my doctoral honors of dissertation with distinction. It was from then that I had learned to never give up on myself. Fast forward a couple weeks after Clark's death, I literally couldn't eat or put anything in my mouth. If I did, I would get nauseous and I would start vomiting. 20-pound weight loss in 14 days, y'all, is not a healthy thing. And I knew that. And I also knew I had to change something for me because I was now alone, no longer part of a unit. So I had to make a routine just for me, a life for me. I had to rebuild who I was. So I set my alarm for 6 a.m., got my butt out of bed even on the days I didn't want to, and I started walking the dog. Then I started developing challenges for myself, incorporating other exercise, eating healthy, eating clean. I even completed the hard 75, which is like a mental Ironman, y'all. And now, through all of that, I've gained internal strength and fortitude And I can stand here in front of you 120 pounds lighter without the use of a GLP-1, can I say, living a healthy life. After I do my morning exercises, my running, biking, spin, meditation, yoga, Pilates, I mix it up a little bit because that helps me with my anxiety, my depression, my PTSD, and helps keep my mental clarity. The other thing that helps with that is my journaling and my writing, because as the nurse practitioner of emergency medicine and trauma, you cannot imagine the amount of guilt and anger, because who am I going to be mad at? I couldn't save him. So I had to journal and write through all those feelings to make sense of it all, to see my life in a new lens, to know that I'm here for a reason and that Clark taught me everything I needed to know. I now coach other people on how to manage their grief and loss in a positive way, or as positive as they can be, depending on where they're at. I also help to educate people and help them to develop a routine for healthy lifestyle through exercise and healthy eating. All of these things are what Clark taught me, because that is part of my dream. That is part of the bigger picture for me, y'all. Looking back, hindsight is 2020. I can see how the dots connect. And now I get to use my doctorate to be the CEO of my own life so that I can now help so many others. Even though I am a nurse practitioner and I get to help people individually one-on-one, on this stage, in this realm, I get to help people on a grander scale, which is what I know I'm meant for. So you see, my life, although it was turned upside down, and I miss Clark dearly, I let that grief continue because it never dissipates. But I let the tears fall and sting my cheeks, because through that, I stay connected to him. And he's always beside me, pushing me forward, wanting the best for me until we're together in heaven again. There's a great quote by Mark Batterson, and I'm not going to quote it exactly, but it does go something like this. Never forget to chase the lion, and remember the Chaser's Manifesto. The goal of life is not to arrive safely at death. You're to run to the roar, set God-sized goals, go after God-given passions, go after a dream that's destined to fail without divine intervention. Blaze new trails. Don't be part of the problem, but find your own solution. Be proud of the nail-scarred hands that you have. Don't ever give up. Don't ever let go, but chase the lion. A lot of times I promised Clark that I would make my story a life worth living, and I have done that, and I continue to honor him and the life we shared through dignity and grace and love, not only for myself, but through my ability to help others. It's given me the fortitude and the confidence to stand here in front of y'all and share my story of love, loss, and reincarnation. Thank you.
Your story matters.